And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. We're here to check in. We've been off for a little bit. I think today I want to talk about my mom a little bit. I want to talk about the passing of loved ones, family. I don't want to say we're going to get emotional, but we're going to talk about some things today because I want to be able to talk about my mom and some things that happened. So then we're going to catch up a little bit. You and I have not gotten a chance to talk about the Super Bowl. So I'm hoping to end with a little bit of Super Bowl talk. How does that sound?
That's good. You know, this is your day. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I'm going to get that in writing in a signed contract.
Just today.
Just for today.
Just today.
All I wanna do is feel awesome. All I wanna do is feel awesome. All I wanna do is feel awesome.
Mark, how are you feeling today?
Better than you.
I feel pretty good. I want to thank you. I want to thank Carrie for coming up. You guys actually came to my mom's visitation. We didn't do like a typical service thing. We did more of like a viewing style. People could come in, say their last goodbyes on Monday. So wanted to thank you and Carrie. Appreciate you guys coming up. But yeah, it's been an interesting 5 or 6 days. You and I haven't really had a chance to catch up or anything like that or talk about it. But you and I like to dive into things and look at the other side of things. So I think I think losing a loved one is something where I think in the moment we get caught up and we don't always get to talk about kind of like the edges of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have, obviously, both my parents are still alive. And so I haven't, if you haven't deciphered, Jeff's mom passed away last Thursday.
She passed away early Thursday morning, about 1 a.m.
Okay.
So we had to keep her, it was ironic. We had to keep reminding ourselves all day Thursday because we kept saying she passed away yesterday,
but it was
really, at the end of Thursday.
It is one of those, the day, I know midnight counts, but the day ends when you go to bed and the next one starts when you wake up. So I get all that. It's been weird being from this side of it and watch you go through it because your mom's been sick for a while and your mom was really sick and did not get a good diagnosis. When they found out she had cancer and did, with new treatments and experimental treatments and all these things, did way better than she expected. So as time kept going on, and she would have her good times and bad times, and I'd ask, how you doing? And you just kind of kept saying, like, we've already won because they gave her this long. What was the original diagnosis?
So
3 months?
We were told at the time it was kind of like an idea of 60 days. But it was, as time went on, we kind of realized like 3 months was what we had said. The doctor kind of said, like 3 months, if you have things you want to say them. But as time went on, we made it over 3 years.
Right.
Hard to be upset when you turn 3 months into 3 years. I'm not saying that I wasn't sad, that my father and my sister weren't sad. I'm not saying there wasn't emotion. But I even, talking to doctors and talking to nurses and people at the gatehouse here in Williamsport, I just felt like we had won. I know that's a weird thing to say after someone loses their battle with cancer. When she was diagnosed, it was stage 4. It was a rare form of cervical cancer. So we had the majority of what we did was experimental. Even when things went well, the doctor would kind of look at us with a smile and say, I don't know why. Like it's going well and things are working. He goes, the downside though is we can't explain it. We don't know why it's going well, which, made it, you're just never going to be able to go into remission when you don't know the reason why you're doing well. It just makes it very hard to completely remove it and go into complete remission.
One of the fascinating things as you get through life, I don't remember how old I was when I realized this, but the complexities of life and the everydayness, and I remember the first time I was ever at a viewing, it wasn't the first viewing I was ever at because I was a little kid when I was at my first viewing, but I remember sitting there the one day thinking about the smiles and the laughter.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, depending on the age and depending on the circumstance, that some are more devastating than others. But I was at a viewing not that long ago from a classmate of mine. His father passed and he had been sick and it was getting worse and worse. And his widow was full of smiles and full, like, almost the relief of like, he's better off now.
Yeah.
Because like it wasn't good for anybody at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And to think that someone's spouse, and they must have been married 50 years, and to think that someone's spouse, that the funeral would almost be a good thing, but that's where they had gotten to because of his health deterioration. I'd only ever met your dad like twice, but in talking to him, the thing that he said to me was, once she was diagnosed, there was this fear that there was going to get to a point where she was really suffering.
Sure.
And he's like, we kind of never got that. Not only did you say you beat, Father Time, because you're supposed to have 3 months, you had over 3 years.
Right.
But they were mostly a good 3 years.
It was unbelievable because there's two things that I've noticed when you talk about cancer. The first thing that you notice is everybody has somebody. Everybody has someone who went through it. Everybody has somebody that they've lost to it. And you don't always realize it sometimes until it's now,
Right.
your turn. I hate saying it that way, but I don't know how else to say it. So that's the first thing I've noticed is like, oh, wow, like this is an experience that the majority of us share. The second thing you begin to notice is there are people who are unbelievably unlucky. There are people who find a way to go into remission. Everybody's story is a little bit different. My mom's story is one of 3 years of really like truly avoiding true pain, or either she did a very good job of not letting us in on it. We did trips. I mean, this was a little difficult to tell. So the last
to jump in, the one comment you would make about your mom is energy. That was the big effect for her. She was tired, but she wasn't in pain.
Tired. But a lot of it too, though, is like we were going, like we were doing stuff, and we were taking trips, and we were doing stuff with the nieces. So energy was always one of the things that you would kind of notice, right? It was very clear to tell when she was tired. One of the things that we're going to remember, one of the last things that we did in the hospital, we had to move her over to Gatehouse. And before we moved her, and before she was truly like, I want to say like sedated, but essentially sedated.
Yeah.
But one of the last things we did before she was heavily medicated, as they were getting ready to move her, they gave her the 0 to 10. Like, what is your scale? And she sat up, and I mean, she kind of thought about it. She goes, a 0. And it's one of those things where like, she just was never going to admit it. Like she just wasn't going to let it get to her. She was never going. The last 0 to 10 scale. And I mean, she passed away 10 hours later.
Right.
And her pain scale, she told the doctor on a scale of 0 to 10 was a 0. So, which it obviously wasn't. And everyone in the room knew it wasn't. But she was not going to let anybody know. So I think everybody's battle is different. Everybody has these different stories and the things that go on. The one that I will take from my mom is like, you want to talk about somebody who just really was going to make the most of it, whether it's 3 months or 3 years. She was not going to let it cripple her in a way in which she wasn't going to enjoy things. Because I know for some people that's not easy. And I know for some people that's not always able to, they're not always able to do that. Sometimes it's so crippling, you're not able to kind of mentally challenge yourself and say those things. So it was bizarrely not how I would have wanted it to end. I don't think it's how anybody wants their life to end, or it's always too soon. But I have made the comment to several people. It was to be able to have 3 years to truly say goodbye to somebody was an absolute blessing, and it's something that I wish everybody got the chance to do that. I think it's what has allowed me to kind of be clearer about things than maybe other people get to.
Let me tell you one thing you're not clear about, and if I could give a little social etiquette aspect.
I'm ready.
Go on your Facebook page.
Yes.
And post the details of the services. Because I woke up Monday morning.
Yes.
And I could not remember. I knew she had passed last week, but I couldn't. I was like, was it early? Was it? And I woke up Monday morning, and I thought, like, I wonder how Jeff's doing. And then my first thought was, oh my God, I hope the services weren't Saturday and I missed them.
Right.
So I went, because this is where all the information in the world now is on Facebook.
Yeah.
I went to your Facebook page because I knew, being an intelligent person that you are, you would have posted the details. Yeah. You have no post since January, so you were no help.
Correct.
And fortunately, it's whatever 7, whatever 8, whatever in the morning, and I'm just like, I'm gonna text his girlfriend and I texted her and she sent me back. She's like, they're today, they're in 2 hours, and here's where they are. And I was just like, so to everyone else, somewhere, because I just went to a viewing down in the coal region.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
recently, very end of January. And it was a college teammate buddy of mine who now lives in Ohio, who I hadn't seen in a long time, but he posted it online that his mom's services were going to be there. And I know he would be there and a couple other college football friends. And it was an hour drive.
Yeah.
And I went, but that's how I knew. So to everyone else who will listen to me, because Jeff won't listen to me.
Yeah.
Just if somebody go on the Facebook page, because it's there, you can find it, you can get the details.
I see both sides of it. Everything that you said makes complete sense to me. I think my struggle, and to be honest, I think my dad's a little bit like this, and we're all a little bit like this in my kind of like immediate family. Accepting sympathy is not our best skill. And there's a balance, and I've talked about like the difficulty of posting to social media and why are you really posting it, right? And so I think the challenge for me and maybe my immediate family of posting it is kind of that idea of like my mom never would have posted.
Well, see, and
so
this is what I said to the people here, because when I came into work, and I was like, we have, this is our window. I'm going, who's going with me?
Yeah.
And then people were like, well, I got this to do, and I got this, and the Carrie's like, I can go, and whatever. And I told the story that you didn't post it. I told it, I texted your girlfriend, and just like, luckily I texted the right day instead of waiting another day. And I said, I can tell Jeff wouldn't have wanted to bother people. And that would have been his, I'm not like.
My mom, I mean, I can't tell you how many people we got to see Monday at the visitation that said we never knew she was sick. And that's just how.
I get it.
It's a trait of my mother, and she has certainly passed it on to my sister and I. We are not the greatest at asking or expecting help or sympathy at times when it's clearly okay to ask for it. We very much struggle with that. And I think part of our debate we talked about earlier of posting on social media, we struggle with that balance, right?
No, right. And the first thing that you said when we showed up was you didn't have to come.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know genuinely, and people would say this, and sometimes they're lying and sometimes they're truthful. If we hadn't made the hour drive or whatever it is, like, you wouldn't have been like, oh, those pricks.
It's so like, it is a neat, interesting thing to talk about, because I feel like most people don't get to talk about it, is like, when you're going through this, there is a sense of like, you want to celebrate a life, right? That obviously it was very important to you. But at the same time, I can't tell you how many times when we were having discussions, the thought was about other people. And like, do we do it on a Monday because it's a hassle? Like, people may have to get out of work or not. But, do you do it on a Super Bowl Sunday where like people already have their plans set? And it is fascinating to me, the balance and the struggle between celebrating someone that really mattered to you, but also trying not to disrupt other people that you obviously still care about and that have their own lives and everything. So yes, it was one of the more unique struggles, because most people only go through this twice. Some never go through it. If you're, I don't want to say lucky, but it all depends on how your life and your path goes. And so it was unique. I will say this, getting the chance to say goodbye to her for like 3 years, it's amazing. And my dad and I agreed on this. The only time we ever really got emotional, and we talked about this several times, it is incredible how nice people are. I don't know. The first night, I obviously shed some tears, and that first night of acceptance and it finally happening, and like you said, the relief and the weight of it all. After that, though, the message. I mean, I have messages I'm still trying to get through. I went through about 50 this morning. I have about 100 more to go yet. People are too nice, and my dad and I would kind of laugh to each other of like, I'm emotionally fine. And then someone does something that is so nice and it just floods over you. And so that is emotionally for me, how nice people are. I know that's a weird thing to think about after your mother passed away, but it is unbelievable. Like, small town communities, Like, I had old teammates reach out. I had former players it was almost like numerous communities were reaching out about a person that they knew, this person knew them for this, and this person, it was just, I don't know. The generosity of people was overwhelming.
It's funny how you talk about how nice people are, and then I think about how mean you are to me every day.
I know. Every single day I have to put you in your place.
And I'll throw this out there, and this is the last. Carrie and I had this discussion on the drive back. I saw it was a Little House on the Prairie episode when I was a little kid. And I'll never forget this. And it's Little House on the Prairie was a great show, by the way. I know it's before your time, but old people like me, it doesn't sound like the most masculine show, but this show was good.
Right.
But there was this lady who was probably grandmotherly age.
Okay.
And she faked her own death. Okay. So she could attend her own funeral.
Got it.
Because there was a son she hadn't seen in a long time. And she even told, like, the gist of the show is she's like, because I want to see everyone before I'm going to be gone sooner or later, and they're all going to come to my funeral, but I'm not going to be able to see them. I want to see them while I'm alive. Right. So they put this whole thing in. The one part I remember, well, a couple parts I remember was one of the, I think it was Caroline Ingalls, the wife, went in to tell her how stupid of an idea this was, and we're not doing it, and blah, blah, blah. And she came out, she got in the wagon, and Charles goes, how'd that go? And she goes, I'm baking the cake. So they went through with it, and it was this whole thing. So fast forward, when my grandmother, who would have been 99 on the Friday, she just would have had her 99th birthday, which my mom and I talked about. But she was, at the time, it was going to be her 80th birthday. And she was still doing she lived to be 89 or something. She was still in really good health. And I said this, like, we should get her whole family together and have a birthday party for her with everybody. Because she has a kid that lives in Missouri now and grandkids and whatever. Sure. And we should do it. And her birthday was in February, and it worked out perfectly because Mike was still playing, but it was before Mike had to leave for spring training. Yeah. And I said, we should do this while she's still alive. Right. And what's funny is the first year, my mom and my aunt poo-pooed it because it was too much hassle and too much this and too much that. And then in the spring, summer, my uncle, who lives in Missouri, had come back to visit people and whatever. And I told him, I was like, this was my idea, and your sisters crapped all over it, and that's why we didn't do it. And he said, next year you call me and we'll work it out. Yeah. So him and I worked it out from afar. We got everyone's travel arrangements. We had the play, and we had a photographer, and we had everyone. Yeah. And then we told him with a week to go. So we did it for her 81st birthday. Yeah. But it is an aspect that I'm glad we did it, and I think other people should do it again, because obviously everyone does come to the funeral because it is the last thing, and it's this celebration of life. But especially if the person is still in good health or relatively good health, that they can enjoy it, you should set something up while they're still there to enjoy it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's just sometimes your life doesn't slow down until it has to, right? And yes. I think once it's like you said, like, that was very well said. You stole that from a meme. I didn't, but it is one of, like, once. But then, like you said, like, the idea of his funeral is like, this is it, like, right. This is, and so how do you convince people to stop? Right, I think is the challenge in getting them to recognize that. But well, yes, it's just like everything else. People need deadlines, and people need, like, it's a funeral's almost black and white. Yeah, like you got to go, or you're not, and there's no like you can send a card, whatever. But yes, when people are left to their own devices and their own schedules and there's so much of, I can do it tomorrow. I don't need to do it today. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. There is. I do want to tell this because I'm just curious of your take, not necessarily your take on it, but again, we always kind of talk about things on the edges and the lines and stuff like that. So I was present when my mother had passed away. Late at night, we had kind of sent everybody else home to rest up, and I don't want to say like I was taking the first night. You were the only one there. I was the only one there. And that's okay. Like, the way it worked out with my family, it kind of made sense because, like, my sister has kids. Right. And she had been going through this constantly. So it was kind of one of those things where, like, well, you're going to be useless if you don't get some sleep. So, like, let's get you sleep first. And it just ended up that I was there that night. And
I'm not saying I knew. I didn't know. But I kind of like, I was looking at my sister and I was looking at my girlfriend as the night went on, and I'm kind of like, I don't think I'm leaving. Like, I think someone needs to kind of be here tonight. And so it happens. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. So it happens, and I'm calling, I'm reaching out and I'm calling different people and I'm kind of notifying them what happened. And the next day we're making choices, and I'm trying to think where I was going with that. What were we talking about before?
You were just talking about the fact that I don't know, that you were there and you were the only one there at night. And I'm trying to think of what we talked about before that.
That's okay.
I don't know.
I lost it.
I don't know.
And that's all right. But I was the last one there, and I just remembered like talking with my dad, and there was, like you said, like this sense of relief, and it just kind of made sense. But
it'll come back to you at like 3 o'clock when we're off the air, like what your point was.
And everything else. So, but thank you to everybody that came to the visitation. Thank you to everybody that reached out. If I have not responded back to you, I'm telling you, I went through a bunch of messages this morning. Some of the cards were overwhelming, especially at my dad's house.
Anyone who texted you, unless it's the first time they've texted you, realize you're like the world's worst responder anyway.
Yes, correct.
So they're not even like whatever.
It was the least amount of time that I had spent on my phone. I mean, I was barely on my phone the last 5 days. So
yeah, I believe that.
It was probably the most present I have been in a very, very long time, in the sense of I was where I was and it was in front of me, and everything else kind of didn't exist.
Don't like the fact that you think the phone makes you unpresent.
I think it makes you very
I don't like
present.
That. I don't like your assumption there. I disagree.
I disagree. I think once a week people should have to just like 1 out of 7 days should be like a no phone day. 1 out of 7. 1 out of 7, you're just where you are, and you're just there, and it's in front of you, and the world's in front of you.
What a miserable day that would be.
1 out of 7, you would really struggle with it. I don't know if you could do it, to be honest. I don't think you could do it.
I don't know why anyone would want to. I don't know. I don't know. The phone is just so.
I remembered what I was going to tell you.
Go ahead.
So I call my dad that night. And again, this is one of those like on the line, on the edges, kind of, you don't think of it this way. And so I call my dad, and the first thing he said, I said, "Hey Dad, just so you know, she passed away peacefully." And the first thing he said to me was, "Okay, I think I'm going to call my mom and let her know." And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. The irony that I'm calling my dad to tell him the biggest news.
His mom is still, your grandmother's still alive.
Yes. My dad's mom is still, she's crushed. She walks like 3 miles a day. She's crushing it. And so I had this moment where like the world just froze, because I was thinking to myself, I'm telling my dad the most important news of my life. And my dad's first response is, I need to tell my mom. Right. And it was, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to explain it. But it was a very clear, you couldn't write it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like this.
No, that is a fascinating dynamic.
This dynamic of like the person that my dad would tell the most important thing in the world to first, I'm now telling my dad that person is no longer here. And it was, I immediately immediately, you know me, I'm a weirdo. So I'm trying to put that into perspective, and I'm trying to figure out what that means. And so immediately I thought about, I'm fortunate enough, I'm very, very lucky. On my girlfriend's side of the family, I have a great group of brothers. There's 3 of them, and their mom passed away when they were all unbelievably young. I mean, we're talking, the oldest one was a toddler, like when she passed away. And so my immediate perspective was like, here's my dad who's, 30 years older than me, who still has his mom. And then here are these incredible young boys who are almost 30 years younger than me. And they never really got to know their mom.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess what I'm trying to say is we spend so much time, you and I come on here and we talk about politics, how like people don't have perspective and they don't have, and then we'll talk about sports and just the perspective. It gave me a sense of like how important it is to know numerous stories, and like the more people you know and the more stories you know and the more perspective you're able to have, the better off you're going to be. Because if I would not have had both of those perspectives, I think emotionally, I'm not sure how I would have handled that.
Well, don't you think that the people who struggle the most are the ones who are most self-absorbed,
Sure.
and they have fewer perspectives because they don't look at the other perspectives because their world is the world revolves around them.
Sure.
And so yeah, I can totally agree that the people who have the ability to step back and say, well, yes, this sucks, but so and so has it worse.
The human condition in me, the first thing I said, like, well, this is bullshit. Sorry, pardon my, I was like, this is bullcrap. Like, I'm calling to tell my dad that mom passed away, and now he's going to go call his mom.
Right.
And the human condition, like, we all do it. We can't help it. Like, we all have these flickers of moments of jealousy or anger or whatever it may be. And that perspective saved me. Like, getting to know these kids and knowing that side of it. And so one of the things that I took the most from this was that perspective of, like, every person you get to meet, every story you get to know is valuable. That is maybe like the greatest thing that I have taken from this, is without knowing every single person I've met, without getting to hear their stories and all that, I don't know. This certainly would have been harder to get through. And this would have been very easy for me to get angry about. And it would have been very easy for me to be jealous of other people who still have their parents and all that. And all of a sudden, like, the perspective, just getting the chance to know these three boys and kind of their perspective, and it just allows you the chance to take a step back and kind of be like, okay, like, but
you're not an angry person.
I'm not an angry person, but I think part of it is catching it. I really believe one of the greatest things is, like, can you control your emotions? And part of controlling your emotions is catching them before they come out. Do you recognize you're angry before anybody else recognizes it?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but you have a very you're much more analytical. Like a lot of your perspective on coaching is just like even keeled and analytical, and you on a life basis, you don't ride the emotional roller coaster. You're much more engaged intellectually than you are emotionally. So
yeah, I think, yeah, I would still
not that you're unemotional, but you're not just going to be blindly emotional without thought, and that kind of tempers your.
I heard someone, if I can remember who said it, because I did not come up with this. Someone once explained something.
Most of the intelligent things that you say, you didn't come up with. I didn't come up with. So we don't.
One of the best things that I've ever heard is, you never want to be the person on the roller coaster that is shocked when the roller coaster drops. You never want to be the person that's at the top that's like, wait, like, oh my God, like, where. And so again, it comes back to the idea of, like, I've just always thought to yourself, like, you're going to be angry, you're going to be jealous, you're going to feel the gambit of human emotions. The trick is, like, can you see it and get to it before it comes out or before other people? And that's how it is, like, on a roller coaster. Like, it is going to drop. Like, you are getting to the top of the coaster, and whether you want the coaster to drop or not, it is happening.
Right.
The key is, like, on your way up, do you recognize you're going up? Are you prepared for yourself going up? And are you ready to go down? And I think emotionally, I have always held on to that, and that has always been, like,
I like the thought is you want to be emotionally ready. My thought is you don't want to be the idiot that's like, hey, we're just going to keep going up. Like, of course it's going down. Yeah. You were standing in line watching it go up and down. Like, correct. You're an idiot.
Correct.
So
there are those people.
So yes, no one wants to be an idiot. Correct. Yes, I get that.
If I can think of who said that, I'll let you, because that was not a me. That was somebody else when I was younger. I read that.
No, I get that. I get what it's saying.
Really great.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, so it's been fascinating to see you go through it, because you've been so positive through it, and just like, I think we're doing better than she was supposed to.
I think the positivity for me is that it went better than what I was told. Like if if we only got 3 months, I think this conversation's probably different.
That's fair.
I think that has helped significantly.
And I'm sure in your world, you know, like you said, your sister's married and has kids, and and that's much of the reason I went too, is not just to support you. I wanted to meet this snuffleupagus of a sister that I thought didn't exist.
The natural, as we call her.
The natural.
Yes.
But she's obviously in a stable, like, she has a job and kids, and
she has a life,
right?
Like it's
and that you know that your dad is okay.
Yeah.
It's obviously going to be a great transition for him now, because this person that was in his life for 50 years or however long is not. But but he is not a basket case who is curled up in the corner crying right now because he's lost. And so I think that must make your world a little better too, that the people around that are really important to you are going to be okay.
Yeah, and they're solid. You'll appreciate this just because of like the family dynamics of it. My greatest fear is too strong of a word, but one of the things that in the last week or so, trying to come to grips with and just kind of be prepared for, my mom was always kind of my linchpin to bringing me back into the rest of the family. So my sister and I are truly friends. She's probably my best friend if I really sat down and thought about it. My dad and I get along great, but we have different interests.
But you're very
hobbies.
different.
We're certainly not twins. You wouldn't know it if you just talked to the two of us. My mom was always the one kind of hey, we're doing this. Why don't you come up? Or, hey, we're going to come down and we're going to bring Lindsay and the girl. She was the one who just kind of always was the fulcrum.
She was the social director.
And so for me now, even being around them this past week, and I'm listening to them talk and I'm smiling, and I realized they have a cadence. You can tell that they live closer together, and you can tell they kind of spend more time together because of the younger girls and stuff. And so I'm kind of sitting there.
They like each other more?
What's that?
Was that where you're getting your dad likes your sister
just
more?
Better at everything.
I know.
That. So what's interesting for me is losing the person that I felt always kind of kept me in the Venn diagram, right?
No, I get it.
She kind of made it all. And my mom and I loved watching movies together. My mom and I were similar. Even this sounds stupid. At the beach, my mom and I are both very pale. My dad and my sister tan, right? So even my mom and I may go in to go make lunch to get out of the sun together while they stay. She was just kind of the person that made me kind of part of the family. How
much did your mom like basketball?
She really liked it because her twin brother was very good.
Was her dad the coach?
Yes.
Okay. So she grew up with basketball.
My mom knew way more about basketball than my dad.
That's what I thought.
Way more.
That's what I thought.
And so I think in every family there's a diagram of kind of how it all works and kind of who keeps who in the loop and who keeps together. My sister will do a great job. My dad will do a great job. Trust me, they will not abandon me. They've been nothing but awesome, and they'll continue to be awesome.
If they don't abandon you, it's out of obligation. Yeah. I think it's not.
But it's funny because I'd never thought about those dynamics until now that she has.
No, I get it.
And how much she kept me. Now when I go back and think about it, I'm wow, 70% of what I did with them was because my mom told me, asked me, pivoted, those kind of things. So that aspect of family life is unique. It's now I was thinking about it, and I looked at my girlfriend's family, and I was trying to figure out who are the fulcrums, who are just gave me a different perspective of kind of.
Well, when I met your sister and I said, so you're the one they love the most, I think her response was, can you blame them? No. I think that's what she said.
You cannot blame them. You cannot blame them. So thanks for doing that. Thank you for coming up. Appreciate it. And again,
I understand how it is to be one of two siblings and they love the other one the most. Believe me, I know where you're at.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. But I'll just one last time thank you to everybody, the support, the outcry. It was incredible. I really, really appreciate it. And if you have not heard from me, I promise you will hear from me here in the next day or two.
I was going to see the time frame. I thought you were going to say in the next week or so.
No,
because in the next day puts you in a time crunch.
The next day, I'm telling you, this morning I went through 50 messages this morning. I probably have about another 100. I have phone calls I have to make back to people. I sincerely appreciate it. I promise I'm going to get back to every single person. It's been, I mean, that is the other fascinating part is she was a teacher.
Right.
She was, small towns, Blossburg, 1,000 people.
You're related to 500 of them.
You're related to people, organizations, community stuff, Kiwanis stuff, parks. I mean, you don't realize how many ties somebody has until a day like Monday, where everything kind of comes back together and people are there. And so it was really, really good. So thank you to everybody. And thank you for letting me do that today. We didn't get a chance to talk about the Super Bowl. Do you have Super Bowl thoughts? You and I have.
Before we get to the Super Bowl, I want to mention this because I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Because we talked about, and obviously we're both basketball fans, and Penn State is not a basketball school, but they've had a surprise. I don't know if it's even surprising. They had a big win last night, and they have I went through, I think they have 5 games left in the regular season. They really have a chance to make the tournament. They got to get hot now. Yeah. They got to close strong, but they have some winnable games. Did you know this? What's his name? Jalen Pickett. Okay. Is it Jalen?
Yep.
He, at least as of a week ago, so I assume it's still the same. He's the only player in the country who's averaging 18 or more points, 7 or more rebounds, and 7 or more assists.
Yeah.
To go 18, 7, and 7 in a 40 college basketball game is doing something. And he's the only one in the country. He's 6'4", and he's at Penn State. Now that's just. When I heard that stat, anytime you're the only one in the country and it's a good stat, that's special. And when it's a Penn State basketball, I thought that was neat.
And to your point, it's a good stat. A lot of times when they say that, it's he's the only person in the country to have average more than 3 blocks.
Right.
To be the only person in the country with an 18, 7, and 7 is phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Yes. Really, really impressive.
It is, yes.
And I've said to you, they are fun to watch. There's a lot of good teams that are boring. There's a lot of good teams that they play D, and Penn State are shorter than everybody else. They scrap, they hustle, they switch everything. The guards post up like they're bigs. It is like watching basketball flipped on its head. It is really fun to watch.
They scored 53 points in the first half last night.
Yeah.
50 against a good team. So anyway, I wanted to mention that because I had it written down and I didn't want to forget it. So anyway, so now we can go to the Eagles.
Yeah, Super Bowl. What'd you think? Good penalty, bad penalty.
I mean, it was a penalty. You just can't.
You can't do it.
Yeah. These are my thoughts on it. I thought the Eagles outplayed them. I thought the Eagles should have won.
Yes.
One of the age-old things of football is, do you win or lose the turnover battle? And not only they only lost it 1-0, but it was a self-inflicted turnover that went for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And they punted twice, and their net punting yards were 9.
Right.
9. So as I said to my son, who's an Eagles fan, I said, you didn't. I thought the Eagles, all in all, played better, even though they didn't really run the ball well. They had no pass rush, things that you thought were going to be there. I thought all in all they played better, but Kansas City didn't really have any disastrous plays, and the Eagles had 2.
Yes.
They had a fumble, and they almost had 3. As people complain about the officials from the Eagles side, the Miles Sanders screen pass, was it a catch, wasn't it a catch? Whichever way it was close.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I didn't think the game was poorly officiated. I thought there was a play early where Juju claimed to be held, and they showed the replay, and I thought both receivers were held off the line of scrimmage. I think the Eagles grab a lot of jerseys coming off the line of scrimmage. And in football, they can't, as I was telling my mom, the officials don't just focus on one guy. They have to look at other things. And if you see a jersey get tugged and it's in his hand, they're going to throw a flag. And they can't analyze it with slow motion and say, was it big? Was it this? Was it that? And so I can understand why Eagles because if Hurts doesn't fumble, that's they were rolling, they were winning.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it's oh my gosh, now it's tied again. And I can understand why Eagles fans feel like they let it slip away. But it was a great game. Yeah. It was entertaining as heck.
From a broader perspective, it always felt like the Eagles felt like they had to win, and it felt like the Chiefs just kind of felt like we just don't have to lose. Like it felt like the Eagles felt like we have to chug, like we gotta, and the Chiefs were just kind of like we'll figure this out, like it'll come, and they did. And so I don't know how you put that into football perspective, but that's how it felt. It felt like if you were the Eagles, you could never relax, and it felt like if you were the Chiefs, you just kind of had to wait. That's what it felt like.
Maybe I know going into halftime
Mm-hmm.
with Mahomes limping,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought there was no way the Eagles were losing.
Yeah. Did you see any of the videos about the Chiefs' 2 scoring plays and how they killed second down to set up third? Did you see any of this?
No.
Really, really fascinating. They used a motion scheme. So in Philadelphia, the Eagles, I'll keep this as short as possible. The Eagles, when you go into motion, the Eagles defense would swap out. So
and they would
safety would die. So what the Chiefs would do is they would burn second down, put a player in motion, knowing the play wasn't going to work. And actually, if you remember, on the 1 second down, Mahomes throws it out of the back of the end zone to nobody.
Okay.
Like it literally was like, it looked like the play was broken.
Right.
Essentially, it was a dud play the Chiefs were running, so that on third down, when they would put the guy in motion, he would plant his foot in the ground.
They knew what they were going to get,
and he'd come back. There's videos online, you can see it, that are fascinating, that really show you how the Chiefs essentially out-strategized the Eagles.
I was explaining to our kids at basketball practice yesterday, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I said, when you see these, like when they run a reverse and it gets 15 yards, and the lay fan says, why don't they run it all the time when it gets 15 yards? They only run it when they know it's going to work.
Yeah.
And there are certain guys where they're like, this defensive end stays home. He's disciplined. We can't run it. But this guy will crash, or like you talked about, in this certain defensive situation, if we line up like this and we shift like that, we have something that's going to work. And there's so many X's and O's. I remember the year I was coaching high school football at Montoursville, we were playing somebody. It doesn't matter to the story. I think it was Mifflinburg, but somebody. And they played a lot of shotgun. And back then, 20 years ago, shotgun wasn't what it is now.
Sure.
And we were lining up and had a cover. And all of a sudden, they would take the snap and just run. The quarterback would run option with the one back with them. And they ran it. And we're like, oh, my God, what are we going to do? Because the first couple times they ran it, we had no answer.
Yeah.
And it's just like all those, they're like, what? We've never seen that. We never thought about that. Sure. And they have tricked us until we have time to adjust. And what's fascinating about if the Eagles had another week, if this would have been week 11 of the regular season, they would be like, okay, drawing board Monday morning. What are we going to do? But it was in the Super Bowl, and there is no drawing board Monday morning.
The thing that I took from it is, like, X's and O's aside, the thing that I took from it was Andy Reid and his staff to have the ability to say, hey, it's the Super Bowl, and we're just going to throw 2 plays away. Like, and that's kind of, I think, like, now that I say it out loud, it comes back to my point of kind of like, there's no way the Eagles would have thrown 2 plays away to set up another. Like, it just, like, the Eagles would not have sacrificed a second down to get what they wanted on third. Now, they would have ran a play to set up third down. But the Chiefs literally, like Andy Reid and his staff literally said, we are going to get 0 plays or 0 yards on second down, and we know it. Like, we know this play is a dud. Mahomes is just going to throw it away so that we know on third down we're going to get a wide open.
Yeah, but it worked. Because they're like,
that.
we know on third and this, and we line up like this, this is how they're going to cover us.
But I think Andy Reid and his staff deserves a ton of credit for that, because how many coaches would go into a Super Bowl and would be willing to say, on crucial second downs, we are going to gain 0 yards?
Well, I think too, it comes with the fact that he's already won one.
Sure.
He's a Hall of Famer already, and he knows it. And there's just kind of that comfort level with, we're just going to do it. And it is the one thing that someone said to me before the game started. And obviously I'm a Cowboys fan, so I hate the Eagles. But it's hard to not respect Andy Reid's career, both in Philadelphia, because in Philadelphia they never won the Super Bowl, but he not only they made the playoffs, he won a playoff game like every year for 8 years or something ridiculous. That they said, I just hope the game doesn't come down to Andy Reid blowing it with clock management at the end, because that was it's always been one of the knocks against Andy Reid. And it was, I would have to think that longtime Eagles fans, I can't believe they hate that guy. Like,
No,
there
you
had
can't.
to be a level of, like, I hate losing, but to solidify Andy Reid's legacy,
Yeah.
I guess, for lack. And the Eagles, like, even after he left, they still won a Super Bowl. So getting rid of him wasn't the wrong thing in
No.
Philadelphia.
I did not hear any animosity towards Andy Reid.
I don't think there can be.
I have 3 things here left. Can I give you one strategy thing?
Yes.
Trying to let them score at the end. So Kansas City has the ball. It's a tied game. Running back is running towards the end zone. The defense is near him, but it's very apparent they're not going to tackle him. Why do teams not practice scenarios where you drag them into the end zone? Why does the Eagles secondary, once he gets to like the 10-8, the 7-6, like once he
pick him up and carry him?
Why are you not grabbing him by the, like literally grabbing him by the jersey and just trying to like hog wheel him like into the end zone?
I'll bet somebody does now.
Because they could have. Now listen, it's not going to work every scenario. Like, I understand that. But like, that was a moment where if Philadelphia wanted to toss him into the end zone, they could have.
Well, I was going to say, because you can't pick him up and drive him back, but you pick him up and carry him forward.
Yeah. And to be honest, you don't even really need to carry him. Like, if you kind of have him like under the armpit, like in the jersey, and you're kind of like it's not.
If you
easy.
can get him and lift him up, yeah. I mean, it is interesting.
I'm not implying it works every time. I'm just saying though, like, try. Like, I can't imagine that there's not specialists in football that don't, when they're going through like situations and all that stuff. I just don't understand why that's not a thing that is discussed or worked on.
It probably just because it doesn't happen all that often.
I get it, but then when it does, it is the most important thing in the world.
It's
when
big.
It does. Okay, so I'm not crazy though. Like, more people should do that.
No, it's something that people will try from here on out.
Yeah.
Like, if you get a hold of the guy, we'll carry him in.
Yeah, no, they certainly should have tried. Thoughts on Rihanna? You watched it, yes or no?
No, I did not.
Oh, you didn't watch it?
This is what I did. I was very lazy in the afternoon.
Okay.
I probably took a nap. And I think, you know what? Because there was points in the day where I was like, I should get on the exercise bike and not just be such a slug.
Right.
But then I thought, well, I'll wait till the game starts.
Right.
Because it just, when I'm riding the exercise bike, I have it set up in front of the TV.
Yeah.
And if I'm engrossed in something, it's a much easier ride. And I guess people treadmill and stuff. So I was all sweaty at halftime.
Okay.
And then I was like, I'm going to go take a shower. And I knew, because during a normal game, to run up, take a shower, and get back, you're pushing it.
Yeah.
But I knew during halftime, I was going to have plenty of time.
Okay.
So I rode in the first half, and I missed the whole halftime
show.
So
if you want to know the Mendoza line of whether or not you're old or young, ask somebody if they liked the Super Bowl.
I was going to say,
that is the overall. And listen, I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about if you are pop culturally old or if you are pop culturally young.
So you liked it.
I thought it was great.
And I know exactly what you're talking about, because on my feed,
yes,
I have seen there's no middle ground.
Zero.
They either loved it,
correct,
or they hate. Now, I've seen the ones that they were trying to pick the songs and they were a little surprised by her song choices.
Sure.
But it was loved or hated, and I am with you. I've seen people say it was the worst one ever.
Correct.
Trump said it was the worst one ever. And I didn't like, I have friends of mine who said, that's the worst halftime show I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then I've seen people say, you must be old, you must be white, all these things, because it was great and you don't know what you're talking about.
It is the Mendoza line
of
Super Bowl halftime shows, of where there is a clear, and again, it's not age defined. It's like hip is the wrong word, because it's not hip either. But it is like the pop culture line of like, you are either on this side of pop culture or you are on this side.
Now, there were comments about the dancers that bothered people, that they thought it was just weird.
So this is my opinion. I think that show was done more for the media side of it than any other show before. That show was done for the people at home versus the people in the stadium. Well,
I'll say this, and I said this to buddies of mine who also maybe Maybe it's because they're old and white, but they didn't like the show either.
Oh.
And I said, I never realized this till I had daughters who would not watch the Super Bowl and then come in and watch halftime.
Okay.
They're trying to, the Super Bowl is that one event that's trying to get everyone.
Sure.
So they have the football fans, obviously.
Sure.
They have the people who are just whatever, but the people who want nothing to do with it and all that other stuff, they have them at halftime.
Yeah.
And they still get that viewership. And that's why halftime is much more about theater. And as the old rugged football fans complain about the halftime show, unless it's the Rolling Stones, they don't care about the old rugged football fan at halftime.
Sure.
Because they already have them.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't surprise me. It's always fun to think of who's going to be next.
Yeah. The irony for me was she didn't have any guests, which certainly hurt her. There are people that are upset it was her and her alone.
Right.
The irony for me is, from a performance standpoint, she sounded really good. Like really, really. If you're just talking about the musicianship, like the actual artistry of it, she was on key. It was on point. She sounded good. She played all the hits, yada, yada, yada. The irony is like, and you and I've talked about this, there are acts that are older that people would enjoy more, but they're not going to sound as good as her. And here's the thing, people don't care, and that's fine.
Right.
I have no issue with somebody wanting an older act and it not sounding as well, but they know the song and it makes them feel good.
Right.
I totally get it. If you disliked it, that is fine. But I have not heard one person yet say, I disliked it. She sounded awful. You know why? She was really good. Nobody has yet told me she didn't sound good. She was really good, on point.
No, but I agree with you. It
Yes.
was either loved or hated.
I agree with that. Here's my last one for you about the Super Bowl. The commercials. I don't think they're good anymore. Now, here's my problem, and you and I have talked about this. I don't watch commercials anymore because of streaming and just everything else. Commercials are almost completely out of my life.
There were a couple that I was really
Okay.
impressed with, and now I can't think of them off the top of my head.
But as the night was going on, and I would peek over and I would see a few, I was like, these are not, I don't know. Like, it's just not what it used to be. I don't think they're very good. I think they are trying to be so correct with everything that it's like, it's cookie cutter-ish. Like, you're not getting the nuance of like older commercials. Sir, that's my hot take on Super Bowl.
Was the flag football one in the Super Bowl?
I'm not sure. Which one was that?
The girl running the flag football where everyone was chasing her through town.
Yes.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because I just saw a thing about how fast high school, I think it's in like 10 states now where it's
California just approved it.
Florida's one. Pennsylvania is one of the ones that it's like a trial. They're going to have a trial. Not a trial. It's on a trial basis, and they're trying to get it in. There were a couple. I always like to see the nostalgic people and the commercials that bring the old people and like famous and go.
Travolta did one. With
the Travolta one I loved.
Okay.
Oh.
See, and I thought it was fine. Like, I don't think it's a bad commercial, but like, I don't know.
I thought it was clever.
Okay.
It was a cell phone one, wasn't it? Wasn't it for?
I can't remember. I just know it was with the characters from Scrubs.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I love the Travolta one. But I get it. It's just, it's different.
Yeah. I don't love him. Didn't love him. I think I was out. We'll share this one real quick. Got to tell you, Jeff, there's nothing deep or nuanced about the old Budweiser frog commercials. That's fair. That's true.
I was thinking Bud Bowl.
Yeah.
You remember Bud Bowl when they did that?
Yes.
When the bottles used to play football. And,
yes.
Right.
That's all I got.
Local
basketball. P-Hacks start tonight.
It is kind of the lull before the storm.
Yep.
And it is. Well, we're through Valentine's Day. One thing that you had said this to me before, and I agree with you, as a guy who, this is your first year of not coaching in a long time, but I've coached and not coached. When you coach basketball, it makes winter go super fast.
Yes, it does.
And to think that here we are, we're closer now to March than we were to January.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow.
You know, it's not going to help when you walk outside and it's 67 degrees right now.
Yeah, it's going to be 30 some next week too.
Yeah.
That's why March is the worst month of the year. And we'll get to that when it gets to March.
Yeah.
But because you have that day in March, it'll be March 8th and it'll be 70. and you'll think spring's here, and then March 11th you'll get 8 inches of snow.
Right.
And that's why March is just God's way of toying with you and be like, yep, no, not yet.
You know what though? A lot of that is Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
A lot of that is where
I'm
we
with
are.
you.
So,
but it is.
We will not be back Friday. Next week we'll dive back into it. I'm out on Friday, but next week we're hoping to dive in. There were a lot. You know, it was weird, and this is just how the world works. There were a lot of things that as the week kind of went on, I would see. I'd be like, oh, that would be fun to talk about. Like that would be fun to because now that's kind of
right.
how. So there are things that we may on Monday. I may just do like a 2-week kind of like, what did you think of this? What did you think of that? Maybe that's what we'll do on Monday.
I'm ready.
Because there were a lot of things that I immediately was kind of like, ooh, I wonder what Mark thinks of that.
You should think that a lot.
I knew you were going to say that as soon as I said it. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Thank you to everybody who commented today. We won't share all of them, but we appreciate you guys reaching out. And Monday, I think, is the day. We'll be back, and we'll be back at it, and we'll start doing the things that we do on the Midday Show.
The things we do.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you guys next week.